So thank you for joining us on this podcast, Lorna. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and your role in terms of First Star.
Okay, yep, thanks very much. So I'm Dr. Lorna Goodwin. I'm the Executive Director of First Star UK, and I have been involved with First Star since it first came to the United Kingdom, and I'll talk a little bit about that process. But my background was as a teacher, so I taught in a secondary school for over 12 years, and then I moved into higher education and became a teacher educator, so training the teachers to teach, which I did for over 20 years. But at the heart of all my work has always been the premise of everyone should be included. And I found in my teaching career, what I saw was a lot of people not being included. So I was a PE teacher, and we had a curriculum in the state system in PE that was very much based around those who can do. So, we'll pick our teams and we'll pick our things like this, but they're very focused around children who can already play football or play rugby or whatever it might be, not the youngster who's got so little confidence that they don't even want to come to the coaching. And when I was doing my research for my doctorate, which is on inclusion, I had one young boy say to me, I said to him, "Oh, you're going to join the cricket club? You're really keen on cricket. We've been talking about England were winning that summer, so it was a good conversation." I said, "Well, why don't you join the cricket club at the school?" And he said, "Well, I'd need some coaching to do that." So he wanted coaching to come to the coaching. And for me, that was a bit of an epiphany that there are a lot of children out there who don't have the confidence to just join what for many people would think, well, that's just an easy one, just go along and join in. And so throughout my career, I've kind of taken that and thought, well, actually, what does it take to join in, and what does it take to get to where you want to be? And I reflected back on my own education career, and I was at school at the time when everyone did an 11 plus, and then you went on to grammar school or you went on to secondary modern, and I failed it. I was a service child and we moved around a lot for all sorts of reasons, and I failed it. And I think if I hadn't had people who believed in me, particularly my parents, who put a lot into my education, I don't know where I'd have ended up, but I have, a successful teaching career, an academic career, a master's degree, a PhD, all from someone who failed their 11 plus, who was told at 11, no, you're not bright enough. And I think for First Star, I want First Star to be the person at the end of the phone that says, it doesn't matter. We still believe in you. We still love you. It's okay. And I think every child should have that. And I think young people in care don't necessarily. So, becoming involved in First Star was a bit of a personal mission for me, that every child should have the sort of backup when things don't go perfectly well.
I think that marries perfectly from what my view of First Star is, because it's definitely about inclusion. Everyone is included, no one is turned away. And I think your experience in that regard and your journey, sort of, although slightly different, does definitely match the scholars that we do get here. But initially, when you first came across First Star and you first heard about it, what was it, apart from that sort of experience that you had, that really drove you to get involved?
It's an interesting one, because I was teaching at St Mary's, and I taught there for a long time, and I'd done my doctorate while I was there, and I'd had a lot of support. I'd had a number of different roles, and at the time First Star sort of approached St Mary's and Peter spoke with the Vice Chancellor there, we were working very much on our mission and vision and values at St Mary's around inclusion and respect, and things like that. And so when Peter presented First Star to us, I just thought, that's it. That is exactly what a university like St Mary's, who has that faith-based value, should be doing. We really should be standing up and saying, yes, absolutely. Not only can we do this, but we should be doing this. And it was another one of those, what a brilliant idea. And can we make it work? Well, yes, we can. It took some doing, but yes, we can. It's very much the approach. So I felt it was living the values of the university, which was one of the reasons I worked there. That is values driven, and I felt that this was just an extension of, and I knew another way of it being, showing the values and the mission of the university.
It's amazing. So you mentioned obviously you've gone through several different roles, teacher, and then you've progressed, and obviously now you're in First Star. What exactly how would you describe your role?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one. I think a little bit of this and a lot of everything else. So certainly until you joined us, Reese, it was me and the trustees. So it was pretty much everything. But it's a really interesting one, because when we set up the first programme at the pilot group at St Mary's, we didn't have a First Star UK organisation. So we were working with the American First Star organisation and using some of their templates and their models, and flexing them to suit the English education system, which is obviously very different, and moving things around so that it fitted with the English systems. So having done it from that sort of side, I then had the opportunity, because we got to the point where we thought, right, we've set up the St Mary's one, it's up and running, we've recruited, we've got the wonderful Nick in place running the programme as the director. What next? Well, next we want to go national. So that's when the whole notion of the First Star Scholars came into being. And Nick was very supportive and encouraged me to think about, taking that on, that national role. And I'm really glad I did, because I think for me, it was little bit sort of left field, because I've always worked in education. So coming out of that into the charity sector was a big learning curve. But also just knowing that we can make it work at St Mary's, and with that experience of what we had to tweak, what we had to change, what worked really well, etc., and taking that into other universities to reach more and more young people. It was just a wonderful opportunity. So I kind of reached forward and grabbed it. So fundraising is core to what I do. So all the programs are fully funded. There's no cost to the young people joining us. The local authorities, we'd actively encourage them to contribute, but we do understand the financial pressures. But no child is therefore excluded because they can't afford something, or the local authority can't afford something, or the carer can't afford something. It's open to everybody. And we're really fortunate in our sponsors, our donors, and our funders, who have just been amazing. Even without COVID, they've been amazing. It's quite a big thing for a funder to make a grant to an organisation that's just starting up, as we were in 2017, because there's no precedent, there's no proof it works in the UK, there's no data to support it. We had the American data, which is amazing, but there was nothing in the UK. So our initial funders, took a risk and a belief that it would work, and we think we have shown how effective the model is in the UK and the difference it makes. So working with them, I mean, that's quite a big part of the job, but also, working with the universities, developing plans, the budget, etc. And we're now in the really fortunate position where we've got yourself who's come on board, and our social media is now developing, and our use of the web, when we're now able to launch the virtual program. So we're at a really good expansion point. And I just love it. I meet everyone from politicians, ministers, all the way through to social workers, carers, and at the heart of it all is the young people. And actually, what we're all trying to do is something good and right for young people in care. And that's what brings all these groups together, whether they're, a volunteer who wants to give a few hours a week or whatever, to a huge funder who wants to make a serious difference to the programme. It's all based around what's the best support we can give young people.
I think that's really important as well, because you're familiar with my background. Like I mentioned, I grew up in care, and I think sometimes you can have a lone wolf mindset where it's me against the world type of thing. But I think, especially from what you've just said as well, it's accepting that you do need that help, you do need that support from everyone sort of around you, and as a collective, you can all do better and achieve this great thing for all young people. So in your experience from, like I said, you mentioned from being a young girl, failing your 11th class, then you got your degree, your master's, all of that experience that you've sort of cultivated. What has actually been, can you pick a key moment or time that has really prepared you for this role?
That's an interesting one. I think there are a couple of moments that stand out, and there are those kind of pivotal moments in your life. And I think one of them was when I was doing my first degree. I was at Birmingham University, and I was convinced I'd had a shocking day, and I was convinced I'd failed all my exams. And it was, and those were the days when everything was based on your final exams at the end of the third year. It wasn't sort of cumulative and modular like a lot of degrees are now. And I was convinced I'd failed everything. And I phoned my parents up and said, I've let you down. I failed everything. It's all a disaster. And they just turned around and said, that's okay. We still love you and we still believe in you. And for me, that was, well, actually, that's what I want to be with the young people I work with. And I think I always knew I wanted to go into teaching at that point. But I wanted to be the one who said, I believe in you. Even if you think you're not very good at it, you can be, and you can be as good as you can be. You don't have to be the next, well, in my days it was Linford Christie that was running the 100 meters, etc. But you don't have to be the next Mo Farah or whatever. You just have to strive to be the best you can be and find the right niche for you, and the right role for you that uses the abilities you've got and the motivations you've got to kind of, I know it sounds a bit twee, but to live the best life you can. And I think that's a good way to do things. You don't have to be like a Richard Branson or somebody like that. You can still make a difference. And I would like to think that everyone who goes into teaching goes in with that approach, that they want to make a difference to the lives of the young people they're teaching. But for me, it's always a little bit more than that. Who's listening, I think, is part of it. Who's listening to people when they say, I can't do this, or can you help me? Or, yeah, well, yes, actually, and yes, you can. And I've always been a really strong believer in that, rather than, especially as a PE teacher, when it's very much around, the head teacher I first worked for. I think the only time I ever had a conversation with him was when he came and asked me how many trophies we'd won that year. Rather than not how well all the young people were doing, and what skill development had gone on, and how many people were just taking part in it for the fun of it, or having a go at something new, or things like that, trying something out, or even stopping behind for a chat because they were having a bad hair day or whatever it might be. I think people very much miss those opportunities sometimes, and I like to think First Star is one of the organisations that doesn't miss those opportunities, that we are always there for that extra conversation, that extra support.
Fantastic. Because so you've been you've been here since practically the beginning, and you would have interacted with the scholars, recruitment, and everything along those lines that comes with that. Is there been, like, since 2017 till now, have you noticed a big change in the scholars from then to now? Like, have you noticed anything with their growth and their journey from the program?
Oh, yes, hugely. I think one of the things it's really important to remember is, yes, our scholars are young people in care, but they're still teenagers. So they're still going to do teenager-like things, which I think is I always found that part of the fun of teaching, because you never know what they're going to say or do next. And, that's the fun bit of seeing them grow up and learn to be adults. So watching them learn to be adults. And I think that the most striking thing is levels of confidence. So you've got young people who perhaps weren't really sure about coming along and joining First Star because it was all quite scary. They were going to be away from their carers. They were going to meet other students who have, sort of similar experiences. Whereas in their mainstream schools, very often there's only 3 or 4 young people in care in the whole school, and they probably never meet each other. So you've got every child in First Star. So that can be quite a challenge as well. So that, I think some of the scariness around coming, big asks for them to come and join. And now I look at those same young people who are 18, who have places at university to study law and psychology and biomedical sciences and media and sport, who are learning to be the next youth coaches because they want to bring on the next and work with the next cohorts, who are working as ambassadors at the universities, encouraging young people to join the programs, who have stood up in Parliament and advocated for themselves at the launch of the 12 by 24 report. They've joined round tables with parliamentarians from the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and they've been to events with funders. I went with some of our scholars to an anniversary event for one of our funders, and the CEO, I think it might have been the chair of trustees, came up and spoke to them and said, "So what are your ambitions?" And they just launched into these most amazing things that they want to do with their lives. And I could have turned cartwheels, and I nearly stood behind them and applauded. I was so impressed with how articulate they were, how confident they were. And all of this is living through a pandemic as well. I just think that they are amazing young people who have taken the opportunity and learned from each other as well as from the staff and the tutors, and that I think they're really quite amazing. And I think sometimes what we forget is the investment they've put in themselves. So by committing to First Star, they've committed to 4 years, coming back every month and every summer. And I think that's huge for a teenager to make that commitment and invest in themselves. And I'm sure they will go on to great and good things. I can see it. I can see them doing it.
Excellent. Good. So yeah, you've been in this field, like I said, especially from First Star, you've been here since 2017 and you've done teaching. So you've been around a lot of young people since you started your career in education. But working in this field, is there any sort of myth that you've come across about young people in care that you would like to debunk?
Yeah. And I still get asked, it's 2021, and I still get asked, what did they do to end up in the care system? Like they've done something wrong in their lives. People still think children go into care because they have done something wrong. I still get people, intelligent adults, who say, why are we raising aspirations to go to university? Shouldn't we just get them jobs and help them get jobs? Is university the right place for them? And apart from the level of frustration that there are still people who have those views, it's that whole myth of these young people are extraordinarily bright, extraordinarily committed to their own lives, and doing well and breaking that cycle. Because care can be a repetitive cycle from one generation to another, but they have been very unlucky in their family life and their family circumstance. And that's the only difference. So my response to people is, would you want that ambition for your own child? And I would really like society to understand that we are all corporate parents for young people in care, not just the social worker that works with them or the carer that takes them into their home. We are all corporate parents, and we all have that responsibility to raise their aspirations, to support them, to be the best they can be, and they should be. So it would be that, what is a corporate parent? And we should have the same aspiration for our children in care as we would for our own children.
That's perfect. Just speaking of that, it just gave me a memory. I remember growing up and going to school, and like I don't know if this is such thing I see nowadays, because nowadays I work 9 to 5, etc. I don't get to see lollipop ladies or lollipop men. But I remember it was like such a big part of my childhood. We go just literally a brief couple 30 seconds, but just to see that happy nature and everyone's so jolly. I remember that being just amazing, that type of support. And that was daily. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally as a child, that actually meant a lot. Just that smile and how are you? How is everything going? Just to ask those questions. I think a lot of people do see young people and they don't might not necessarily ask those questions. They might ask how they're doing in school or how their tests are going, but just to genuinely just take 5 minutes out and just see how they are. I think the little things do really matter.
It's an interesting one because I think with COVID and repeated lockdowns, and I think the whole world has become much more aware of mental health and the challenges that certainly lockdowns brought and COVID has brought to us all. And that notion of asking someone if they're all right can make a difference to their lives, even if it's someone you don't know. Um, so I think how we engage with people, whether it's young people in care or their carers or other young people who are being affected by things, that simple, like you say, that simple ask of is everything okay, what can at First Star we use a social pedagogy approach. It's not about being teacher centered or anything like that. It's about what can we do for you as the young person to move you on. It might be that you're having a trauma moment. It might be that you're struggling with something academically. It's about asking that young person in all sorts of different ways, what do they need in order to take the next step. And how do we as First Star, or we as society, or we as their school teachers provide that next step for them. And I think those are the sort of questions as a society we should ask ourselves.
Definitely. Just because you've mentioned the word teachers as well, I just wanted to ask you, do you think teachers get enough support when it comes to helping young people thrive, especially those with additional needs?
Yeah, I would say probably not. I think my experience as a teacher educator, and certainly, when I did my training, there was nothing about being in care, and the myths were even wilder then than they are now. But I don't think it features highly enough in teacher training programs. I think it probably nowadays, with so much emphasis on in school training for teachers, there's so much pressure on them to deliver the lesson well to the children in front of them, that actually finding out how to engage with particular groups like children in care. If something triggers a child's behaviour in class, what are you going to do? Well, the stock in trade answer is, well, they get excluded from the classroom or they get excluded from the school because they're acting out or whatever, without people having the skill sets and the understanding to think, well, what's going on behind that? And the other thing they don't have as teachers and trainees is the time to look at what's going on behind that and how do I help. I think we've certainly seen it. I think a lot of parents have learned a lot about being a teacher in the last few months, but
Definitely.
I think we put a lot of pressure on teachers to deliver a curriculum rather than to teach a child. And until we can circle back and teach the children, yes, the curriculum gives a framework for teaching the children, but the emphasis should be on the children, not the curriculum. And I think because it stops a lot of other things happening. And that's why you have such, absence rates amongst looked after children are very high. The pass rates at GCSE are very low compared to national averages. Um, there's a lot of placement change particularly amongst teenagers and particularly amongst the post 16-year-olds. So there's a lot of turmoil in these children's lives. And I think unless trainee teachers are helped to understand what that might look like, to recognise it, and to be able to act upon it in a way that keeps the child in the class and learning, if that's the right place for them. There's a lot of children who are either absent because they are voting with their feet, or they're absent because they've changed placements and their school placements haven't been sorted out, or they're absent because they've been excluded, and they're 18 times more likely to be excluded than their peers.
Oh.
So there's a lot of problems within the system. And then you've got the knock-on issue of, right, that I don't have to deal with that child at the moment, I can get on and teach my lesson, off we go. Well, in 2 days time that child's going to be back in your lesson. How's that going to work? Because if they're just plonked back in, they've missed 2 days of learning.
Yeah.
How does the teacher feel if they've had an issue with a child? Maybe they've had a confrontation, etc. How does the teacher reintegrate and re-establish a relationship with that child? And how does the child re-establish a relationship with the teacher? And I think the resources within schools are not directed towards those sorts of things. And then you end up in that cycle of exclusion again, because there's no relationship between the teacher and the child. And the child's got even further behind because they've missed some schooling. So unless you've got really good systems in schools, and some have brilliant systems and do it really well, but unless you've got that, a lot of children do lose out because of the knock-on impacts of there's just not enough time to teach someone how to teach everything and to be able to engage with everybody in an appropriate. It's just not enough time in a year's training to do that. I do notice though the government have now changed the so instead of being a newly qualified teacher and doing a 1-year probationary year as it used to be called, it's now a 2-year programme to train teachers. So they do their initial teacher training and then they get a job in school, and they have 2 years of training in school as an early career teacher. And I think that's a positive move, and hopefully there'll be some aspects built into that around working with children in care.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel that something like that needs to be applied. I can only call back on my experience. I remember there'll be times in school where I acted out, and looking back on it now, I'm old enough to realize, it was probably a cry for help, just a bit of attention that wasn't necessarily identified. So I think definitely identifying some of those things and then breaking the cycle of, if you fall behind, then you're less likely to want to be in the classroom anyway. I used to go on absence and truancies because if I wasn't learning anything in the classroom, why am I there? Type of thing. So I think that definitely would solve a lot of issues.
Yes, I mean it's I don't know what the answer is, but I think the early career teacher program may help. But I think it's part of the advocacy role of First Star is keeping these sorts of issues at front and centre with politicians, with educators, with the Department of Education. And it's one of the reasons why First Star has developed the staff diploma. It's a youth empowerment diploma, so that our staff can take that and learn how to coach and mentor and empower young people from diverse populations. And we developed that with a couple of other partners to actually fill that gap in a way, so that actually there is now this diploma where teachers, coaches, social workers can do this course and actually find out how to engage and how to creatively work with young people in care or other diverse groups, depending on their own setting. So we feel there is a gap in delivery, and we're looking to certainly help fill that with our youth empowerment diploma.
It sounds wonderful. I just wanted to ask you as well, like when you hear the word First Star, what does that mean to you?
It's an interesting one. I mean, it builds its own connotations, doesn't it? In terms of the notion of being a star and star shining bright. I mean, it comes from that Starlight, Star Bright poem. But I think it's a really canny choice of words that really describes what we do, because we put the children first and we want them to be stars in their own world as they go forward, whether that's at university, whether it's in work, whatever it might be. So I think so on that level, it has that. But I think also, you know, I would like to think that First Star will become a national beacon for engagement with young people, mentoring and support. I mean, lots of talk about recovery curriculums at the moment because of the pandemic, but actually our young people, our care experienced young people, already needed that sort of intervention before COVID. So I think I would like First Star to be synonymous with those sorts of interventions, but also to be synonymous with the aspiration of being first, being the first one to do something, being the first one to step forward, being the first one to offer to help, being the first one to go to university, being a star. It might be a star in your own bedroom doing a karaoke, but it's still being a star. And so I think it's a really it really does relay what we're trying to achieve. Really, I think it's a fantastically chosen name.
Yeah, I think it suits the organization
Yeah,
absolutely perfectly.
yeah.
And just on a final note, if there was a young person in care right now, they've just scrolled across and they've seen this, or maybe the social worker has brought it up to their attention that, okay, like there's a First Star program, are you interested in attending? And they're a bit on the fence, they're a bit unsure. What would you say to that person about the First Star program?
Give it a go. Come and listen to the students that are already on the programs, and the difference it's made and the impact it's had. And also, it's, we talk a lot about the academics and what it will bring to that and getting young people to go to university. But at the core of it is the First Star family. So you mentioned right at the beginning that once they joined First Star, they stayed with First Star. And that's very much our mantra. Once you're in, you're in. If your placement changes, your school changes, your circumstances change, you go back to your birth family, you get adopted, you still remain part of First Star for the whole of the 4-year programme. So we're the one thing that will be stable in that lifetime, those 4 years. Recent research has shown that only 1 in 4 children in care don't have some kind of change in their lives every year, whether it's a different school, a placement, a social worker, a personal advisor, a carer. Only 1 in 4 don't experience that change each year. And I think that's a shocking statistic. So the one thing we do is we build a family atmosphere, and we don't go away. So, I mentioned young people being teenagers, and they will be teenagers, but we live through that with them. They're there to help each other. We're there to help them. So it's about give it a go, become part of the First Star family, and come and find out what it's about. And it's about empowering yourself. Don't accept the less than the best from your teachers, from your carers, from your social worker, from your personal advisor, from your coaches or tutors, and from yourself. And we can help you, and we can help young people who join First Star understand what their best is. Sometimes no one's ever suggested what their best might be and what that aspiration could be. And that's what we want to do, is open the door and walk through with them. So come and join us. We'll open the door with you, and little steps, big steps, huge jumps, tiny steps, doesn't matter. Everyone goes at their own pace. So come and give it a go.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time today, Lorna. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.